My name is Meg Tuohey. Together we'll gather wisdom from a wide range of voices, thought leaders and seekers just like you. Through individual stories, we'll explore multiple categories of wisdom and uncover how the stripes of our experiences, both joyful and challenging and all that lies in between, intertwine to create a rich tapestry of life. So whether you're looking for inspiration, guidance, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. This is Wisdom Stripes. Welcome to the Wisdom Stripes podcast, where we explore the profound journeys of individuals who've emerged from life's challenges with hard-earned wisdom and resilience. I'm your host, Meg Tuohey, and I'm thrilled to share that this podcast is brought to you by the transformative program, The Wisdom Lab. If you're feeling stuck in painful patterns, desperately seeking a breakthrough, and yearning for the tools to shatter emotional barriers and reclaim your power, the Wisdom Lab is your answer. In just 4 hours, you'll discover how to tap into your inner wisdom, turn confusion into clarity, and unlock the profound personal growth you've been craving. No more band-aid solutions or surface-level advice. This is about deep, lasting transformation from the inside out. Ready to embark on this life-changing journey? Head to the show notes for an exclusive link to learn more. Let's unleash your wisdom together. Our guest today is Amy Charlesworth. She served in the US Army for 16 years, and in the aftermath of service, she found she had significant mental health challenges to overcome. She now dedicates herself to healing. She is the host of a podcast and YouTube channel, Qnamy, which is Qnamy, exploring various topics to help her audience on that very same path. Welcome to the podcast, Amy, where we are your no-nonsense, fierce fairy godmothers turning pain and confusion into clarity and confidence.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
Me too with you. And Amy, we always start with the same question for our guests, and that is, what wisdom would you like a listener to come away with today?
Great question. So there's a really short story that will answer this, and it kind of lays the premise of who I am and what I now spend my time doing. There was a woman in the woods, and she was tormented by her own thoughts, the intrusive thoughts coming in, and she couldn't turn her brain off. And she was walking through the woods, and as she came across a cabin in the woods, she saw in the window that it was someone she knew. It was her religious teacher. So she knocked on the window and she knocked on the door and was hoping that they would let her in and say hello. And instead, they completely ignored her. They just were reading their book. And so she tapped again, she knocked again, and again, the religious teacher ignored her. And so she started to get upset, a little bit offended. And again, the intrusive thoughts were there, and she's standing outside and confused and not really sure why this person wouldn't let her in. And so again, she knocked, and again, the teacher completely ignored her and just sat there. So she thought, you know what? I'm just going to sit here and wait until they come out and they have to answer for why they're ignoring me. The whole night passes, and in the morning, finally, she awoke to the religious teacher opening the door. And she was geared up and ready to be upset with them. Why would you ignore me? Why would you betray me? Why would you not let me in when I was wanting to say hello? And all the teacher said was, this is my house and I control who gets to come in. And that's the wisdom for our thoughts and our brains and our minds. We get to control who gets to come in.
Well, that does sound like a conversation I want to have with you. And also, I was captivated by that story. I've never heard that story before. Where did you find it, or how did you come by it?
Yeah, I've been so grateful for having many wise teachers come across my path in the last several months. And this particular parable I picked up from a Jewish rabbi who I have had a few sessions with now. And this was one of his teachings. I've been meeting with different religious leaders from a lot of different backgrounds. And his parable was pretty sticking for me.
Oh my goodness. I felt the energy of that, and I felt the trueness of that. And I also felt, as you were telling the story, and you did so beautifully, that it really could have gone in a couple of different ways. It felt like the setup, you didn't really know what the wisdom was going to be because it could have been a few different threads, and the one that it ended up being felt exactly right. So I think that's a lovely story for all of us to put in our pockets. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
We really do get to control the thoughts that cross our minds.
Or at least we get to, if not control them, understand that we have agency over them. We can decide what we want to do with them. Yeah. We can decide about the door opening or closing. Yeah. Okay. Now, I have a question for you. We've heard about your military background. We've heard a little bit about your mental health challenges. Could you share with us your experiences or your battle scars from your journey that have significantly impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, this is a sad thing to say, but there's so many. Which one do I choose? I'll just give you kind of one of the things that's really common for a lot of women, especially in the military, but also in life in general. And, I was over in Afghanistan for a period of time. And while I was there, I was unfortunately I don't like to say victim anymore, but I was unfortunately the victim of some military sexual trauma. And it was so much more than just a physical experience. It was also what now, we've got OnlyFans in this day. This is going back to 2010 before OnlyFans was a thing. And like people were like, who cares if you see me naked? My images were stolen from my laptop and they published them on a CD, and they were selling my CD around the military base that I was on in Afghanistan. And so all these men had paid $100 for a CD of my pictures of me naked. And these weren't things I willingly gave away or shared with anyone. They were photos on my laptop. I was married at the time. I was, me and my husband were trying to maintain our relationship while I was over in Afghanistan for 2 years. Give me a break, but they were private images and they were mine. And my laptop got, the images stolen and given to other people without my consent. So it was so much more than just like a one person thing. This was a many, 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 many people that had violated me. And this is just one story of many stories overseas, but that left me just so broken, and the system failed me in the military, where there was no repercussion for any of the people that had purchased these items. There was no justice, so this is something that I truly was a lesson for me on forgiveness and letting things go without justice, that, that it is possible to move on. It is possible to, have a new page, a new life, new chapter, and mental peace after something so significantly and so cutting and hurtful for me when there's not even any justice.
I think I'd like to pick up the justice piece, because when you have been exposed to something that has been a violation that legally is recognized as a violation, then there is no justice, that is a hard thing for a brain to reconcile. And your beautiful brain has found a pathway through of that violation with no justice. And I can see because I get to watch you while we're interviewing, I can see genuinely that you have found a way through that. I wonder, could you talk to us about how you have come to terms with this experience so that others might understand the wisdom of what you've figured out?
Yeah. And more importantly, what I hope that listeners would take away from my experience is that you're able to do these types of things much faster than I did. And so I learned the really hard way. These are things I suffered with for 10, 12 years alone. I tried everything. I tried pharmaceutical drugs. I tried sleeping medications. I tried traditional talk therapy. I tried the VA system. I tried absolutely everything to figure out how to let these things go. I also, by the way, sought justice. I reported these acts. I viciously and aggressively tried to pursue them. And that just made, by the way, my suffering even worse. That didn't actually help me. So the victory, the justice that we would think would maybe offer some of that relief, you may find that if you go down that path of, trying to viciously avenge yourself, that maybe it doesn't actually offer you the peace that you're looking for. And, so save yourself 10, 12 years of suffering. And I hope what I have to share is helpful. If in a state where you're like, gosh, I've tried everything, I would start to really just understand that when you go inward, instead of going outward, right? I need pharmaceuticals, I need talk therapy, I need, sleep medications, whatever it is. Instead of going outward, go inward. And that piece of going inwards, that's meditation, doing an audit on what I'm surrounding myself with, my life with, what I'm consuming, right? For me, that was alcohol, caffeine, bad friends, party environments, all low frequency, low vibration things that was just exasperating my pain. It was just making it worse. It wasn't solving anything. So going inward was me doing a full 360-degree audit of my life and realizing that everything was vibrating from me outwards. So the pain I was feeling, I was doing, being, consuming, all of these things that were not serving me, they were just making it worse. So when I looked at myself, realized all of these things were making it worse, I just started to cut myself off from all of those things and cocoon myself and just reevaluate for a moment. And during that reevaluation period, that audit period, if you will, where you're just kind of isolating for a minute, what you're doing is you're just evaluating instead, well, what makes me feel good? If all these things don't make me feel good, they make me feel bad. What makes me feel good? And then from there, when you start to pull on the thread of what makes me feel good, it's like, okay, what's my purpose? What do I enjoy? What brings me joy? What do I like to do? What makes me feel happy, right? And that might be finding a new friend group. That might be building a new community, art, creative things like, making a podcast or painting, reading some fun books, listening to a fun murder mystery, whatever it is for you that brings you joy. It might be having a slumber party with your friends, even in your 30s, believe it or not. That's super, super fun to do. Doing all different kinds of things that bring you joy. Finding groups that like get you. And for me, that was, I found a military veteran group that was involved in plant medicine, really diving deep on plant medicine. And they were really connected to like nature and getting outside, grounding, doing things that were helping you be more healthy, like sitting in the sun first thing in the morning and training you on how to have great sleep hygiene. Like all of these things are things that will attract the real true you. And as you go into the real true you, you're able to release the things that that are not yours. So I learned things about like energy, vibration, frequency, all of that. And doing that work really helped me to calibrate mine and come back to center of who I really am. And by the way, I'm not resentful and I'm not vengeful and I'm not hateful and I'm not, any of those feelings that I was having because of what happened to me. I was able to realize I am grateful and beautiful and peaceful and loving, right? And loving is letting go. And so, just rediscovering who you are is where I'm going with this, is the process in which you will find the true healing that you're seeking.
I have a lot to talk about with you because it's not just the sexual trauma or the abuse that you went through in that military time. We also have the very active serving for 16 years in the military and your experiences of war in Afghanistan and Germany as well. So we have quite a lot of adverse experiences. And we have a period of time where they sort of all seem to happen, which is in that 16 years. Was your childhood an unremarkable childhood, or was there also adverse experiences in that space?
I wish I could say that I had like a great family and a great childhood, but I just didn't. I actually, unfortunately, had a really volatile childhood. I was born in England. I have an American accent, which will tell you right away that I moved a lot all over the place. My parents were split. So I was doing a lot of back and forth between countries, in and out of schools. I couldn't maintain friends to save my life. I didn't even know how to do math because moving countries meant I had to learn a whole new mathematical system. So I had a really hard childhood, which is one of the reasons why I joined the military, to seek that stability, the discipline, the peace. And while it definitely gave me all of those things, and I will also tell you, the military is such a beautiful service for so many other reasons, it gets a bad rap for a lot of justified reasons too, but it also creates a lot of good. I'm so thankful for the military, but it also became my worst enemy at the same time. So both my family and my military experience, I would define as really abusive relationships that were super hard to get out of. That's why I was in for 16 years, because it was like I didn't know anything different. After I joined when I was 17 years old, it's all I knew. And so leaving 2 years ago, by the way, so I've only been out for 2 years. April 2022 is when I left. That was the scariest move of my life. That was like jumping off the edge of a cliff and not having the safety net anymore. But man, it was the best thing I ever did for myself, because that's when 2 years ago is when my healing journey like really began, when I was able to start finding myself. But then August of 2024, this year, is when my healing journey really began. So yeah, it's been quite the ride.
I am conscious of people who are listening, and I just want to do a little summary of all the ways in which you've looked after yourself to heal. And also, perhaps, if it's all right with you, a summary of what I think I'm hearing about how you got yourself to the choice point to actually really deep dive, as in what happened to have that happen. So I can hear that we have adverse childhood experiences, many of them with family separation, international moves, and that sense of not being able to succeed at school because maybe not the English language was different, but the language in which different modalities like mathematics was taught was different. And the sense of being on the back foot, not having a safe place, not being able to feel like you could thrive, but instead you were relentlessly trying to survive and put down roots only to have them kind of yanked back up and moved around. And so at the tender age of 17, the goal is to find a stable family system, which is in your workplace, in the army. And the draw is probably stability, senior leaders that look as though they are steady and safe in defending you and also the country, of which is like a symbolization of a bigger family, right? And then when you've got in there, there's been the confusing experience of it being both incredible and also a place of unsafety, and the trauma of that mashing up, where it's like, I belong here and I love it here and I'm being harmed here and I don't know how to live another way and I don't want to go back out into the world because I haven't had a good experience in the world either. And so it took the time that it took for you to kind of pop back up. And along the way, what I'm hearing as well is we have this relentless pursuit of trying to find you. So the talk therapy, all the different modalities you've referenced, you've done traditionally, where they have probably helped, and they haven't also allowed you to have the full expansion of self that you now have got more access to in the post 2 years since leaving the military. Is that a fair summary, or if I missed anything, would you like to change it?
I'm just not sure if I should grab a box of tissues, because I'm like, this is like, I feel so seen and heard right now. Yes, that is the best summary ever. I'm going to repeat this back to myself. Anytime anyone is like, tell me about yourself, I'm just going to be like, watch this podcast, because Meg sums it up great.
Okay. Yeah. So when I see that, I can sort of, and that's why I asked you, did your family of origin experience match what I was seeing from your experience in another type of family, right? Because when humans are a funny group of people. When we have a question, we replicate the environment to try and answer the question. And so you left one group and joined another group. And in doing so, the trauma experiences were different, but sort of similar. And it was only when they got to this heightened level where you said, that's enough. Like, I have to change and heal and grow. I can't live like this anymore. You hit your threshold. Is that right?
I sure did. Absolutely. And magically, since then, all of the lessons I've been learning, one of the first lessons I learned on this journey was I got the gift of the wisdom of the following, which says, everything in life is your teacher. Yeah. Everything that happens to you is your teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Agree. So why don't we now talk about unpacking some of the wisdom that you've gathered. And for those of you who are listening, I do want, and we're going to focus in some areas I can feel, Amy, and they're going to be non-traditional spaces. I also want to just really highlight from a good governance perspective that therapy and those kinds of things played a role in your ability to keep exploring in these other spaces. And they are good hygiene things to have alongside these more different opportunities. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Even in the sense that, so I don't do therapy now. And the reason for that is because to your point, like it probably helped in some regard, but it was very frustrating for me because it was just another cycle of the trauma I lived and I was having to repeat it. And every time I would meet a new therapist, because in the VA system, you are lucky if you get the same therapist multiple times in a row. And I didn't, unfortunately. And so I was having to start from the beginning every single time with new therapists. And so it just, for me, was very traumatizing. And I didn't have a good relationship with talk therapy. But if you can find someone that you can create a good relationship with that's consistent, that is a beautiful modality of healing. And I strongly recommend that. I just didn't have such a great experience because of the VA system. Yeah.
Perfect. So we can leave those kinds of conversations now as though as a community, we are not ruling that out as an appropriate source of support. Yeah. And now let's go into other spaces. So that sounds really good to me.
Amazing.
All right. So you refer to yourself as a gangster. And I understand that this is part of your wisdom, Amy, Queen Amy. Tell us about what you mean by gangster.
Yeah. So that's funny. Where that's coming from, I think, is I had an emotional moment recently where I have a 15-year-old son, and something happened to me, and my son was looking at me and he saw me crying and he said, are you okay? And I was like, I will be. Right. And later that day, literally the same day, I've got music going and I'm happy and I'm super joyful and I'm dancing around the kitchen, cooking some stuff in the kitchen. He was like, wait, I thought you were sad. And I said, no, I gave myself 5 emotional minutes and now we're back to being a gangster. And the lesson of that, the moral of that story is when you have a feeling, feel it, fully feel it, embrace it, sit in it. What is it teaching you, right? Let it swish around the glass like it's a fine wine, right? Like savor the feeling. It's there for a reason. Process that emotion. And I can't emphasize that enough. Feel and fully feel your feelings and savor them and thank them, regardless of what it is. Anger, sadness, grief, whatever it is, let it out. Let it out. And once it's out, know that it's out of your system. Be like, all right, now we're getting back to it. That's back to the grind, the hustle, the love, the light, the joy. Like go back into your true authentic self, because the feeling is temporary. That's just there to teach you something. That's just there to give you a little slice of wisdom, to process something, to close something, to accept something, whatever it is, to teach you. And then you go back into your true authentic self. And everybody that's listening right now, their true authentic self is joy. I promise you. It's love and joy. Light, love, and joy. If you're not in light, love, and joy, you're not in your authentic self, and we need to look to work on that.
I would like to challenge you on joy, because joy is a peak state. That's not a that's a peak state, right? So love, yes. What was your other one? Love, something, light. And joy. Lightness. Light, and joy. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like joy, though, in my model of the world, and maybe we just need to operationalize it, joy is like quite a high frequency, to use your language. And that is a peak state for a human body to be able to have as its emotional home. So is that what you mean by saying joy?
Yeah, I do, because I think when you peel back all the layers of the world and you really go into like what you are divinely, In my experience, what I've been shown, what I've experienced is that we really are just light, like joyful, happy, loving, trusting. Like we're just like, there's no other way for me to describe it than literal light beings, and that are just radiating sunshine and peace and joy. And for me, that's like our most raw form. Like when you think of like a baby, right? Brand new baby, the baby is like easily entertained and happy. You show it anything and it's getting excited and it wants to touch it and feel it and be curious about it. And that's what I envision everybody's true form, their true souls to be.
So I'm just going to play with you on this. And so my version of that is not the word joy, because again, I see that as like a peak state, which is not maintainable in the human biology. My version of that, though, is contentment, satisfaction, the ability to have that sense of lightness, but it is not a peak state of an emotion like joy. Joy might be present, but it would be passing like any emotion would, because emotions are fleeting, they're information. They're not the kind of space that the human lives from. So if I think about a baby, I think about contentment, satisfaction, exploration, curiosity, with moments of joy and other feelings that kind of pass through them. Would you agree? Or I'm happy to, I just like this conversation.
Yeah, no, I love it too. I definitely am moving towards the agreeing side now. I look at emotions like a scale, right? Like, so as we talk about frequency, like as you go up, so obviously you're down here on the bottom of the scale. If you're listening and not watching, is sadness and grief, right? Depression, all of those things. But as you kind of go up the scale, you're moving towards like your neutral, where you're just content, as an example, or where as you go up higher, it's like joy and funny and all these things that are up here at the top. And I just my view of souls is that we're really high vibrational beings in our natural state. And so, I think we're saying the same thing essentially.
I do too.
I would concede that, that joy is something that would be felt, but I would say in our most natural form, we would attract higher vibrational things than any of like the lower vibrational things.
And I also agree. And actually, I wonder if what we're really talking about is separating the human from the soul, if we're really getting technical, because the human condition is not one that is a peak state. It's not. It needs to sit. So if we make your gradient
correct
a bell curve, and we make the bottom of the bell curve helplessness, hopelessness, the heaviest of emotions, and the top is the other side of the bell curve, we have -3 to +3, and in the middle is your homeostasis, which is contentment, satisfaction, etc. And I feel like as a human who needs to go between all of the range of emotions in order to gather information about the world, actually we need to live in the middle and live a little bit towards the +3, which is the feelings that you can ascertain from the positive perspective. But I'm going to do a but instead of an and. Let me do an and instead of a but. And if we don't have negative experiences, that pain is where we find the fuel to grow again. And so we don't want to make it so that that is not desirable, because humans actually learn from adversity. That's where we get the fire to actually grow, assuming the other things are in play. And I know that you don't at all mind negative emotions or emotions that have the connotation of negative, because we have a video of you where you have a session where you're screaming and breaking and trashing a space for like 15 or 20 minutes. That's available on YouTube. So I can also see that you're, what is the word? Which goes from one end to the other. Like you have a good range of emotional, where is my word for you? A good range of emotional experience from which to draw from, which I think equates to the opportunity to grow wisdom. So could we maybe talk about that as a segue now that we're in agreement around the definition?
Yeah. Wow. This is really beautiful, because I think Western society especially has, especially towards women, said it's not okay for you to be hysterical. It's not okay for you to be angry, right? Like women would get locked up back in the day if they were quote unquote hysterical.
Freud.
They would send them to insane asylums, right?
Yes. That was Freud that did that, Amy. That was Freud.
Yeah,
remember?
These are traumatic things that have lived in our DNA for generations where, Freud, where women are not allowed to feel their authentic emotions if they're not in a certain place on the scale, right? And that's why I emphasize so much to savor the emotions when they come up, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with a book called The Body Keeps a Score.
Yes.
But if you're not, I encourage you to read it, because our bodies truly do store absolutely every single emotion that we don't process. And it will come out in manifestation in one way or another. Probably in a time you don't want it to, right? Where you're going to be angry or have anxiety or suffer in some other sort of way. And so I think it's so important to fully feel your feelings and to not be afraid of them, but to embrace them and to find space to let them out, whether that's with a counselor, a therapist, a friend, your partner, in a safe group. A lot of veterans that I'm working with right now, we go to a particular retreat where we'll have a week-long session where we're just processing, talking, creating space for one another, to let those strong emotions out. But it's important to fully love all of your emotions, including anger. Love the anger, love the anxiety. Like they're telling you something about your body, and you should give equal respect and appreciation to each and every single one of them.
I could not agree more. The body does remember everything. And when I became aware of this video you have about the release of that negative emotion, and I don't like the word negative emotion, I really struggle with it, but it is that emotion of the helpless, hopeless rage,
dark.
The darker side, the side that is really painful in the body. When it goes in, it has to be released back out again at some point. The cycle of the emotion is that it needs to complete. And oftentimes the humans, us, we don't like the feeling of it. We're afraid of those big feelings, and people around us are afraid of those big feelings. And we have not yet come to terms with the reality of what it takes to release deep pain. And that is not pretty, Queen Amy, is it? It is not a pretty thing, but it is in its own way
It's not
glorious, right?
Yeah. And I'll share with you the video that you're referencing. I think it's important context for the audience, and it's also such a beautiful story too. So to your very eloquently put summary of my life, as you can probably imagine, it was very traumatic for me. I was scared most of my life. I was on my own most of my life. I've been on my own fully since I was about 13. I got my first job when I was 13. I, dropped out of school, had to go back and get my GED so I could join the military, right? So I've been on my own for a long, long time. So when I went to a retreat recently, in August of this year, I had Bufo, which is 5-MeO-DMT, and that turns your brain off essentially for about 20 minutes. And what happens in that space, you are not conscious of. You don't know what's happening with your body during that time. But the beautiful thing about Bufo, the medicine, is it allows your body to expel whatever energy is inside of it. And that varies for everybody. And so during that 15, 20-minute video, I'm screaming the entire time. I pulled my knees up into my chest and I am screaming bloody murder. And all of this energy was coming out of me. And when I came out of the medicine, I had no knowledge I was doing that. And it's only because I have the video do I have the proof that I was screaming and like what happened to me during this time. And what was happening in my mind during that time was very different than what was happening in my body. Because in my mind, I was being shown a montage of all of the times in my life, these pictures, like all these pictures of just trauma, where I had been basically falling down a cliff, bumbling over, hitting a rock every single 2 seconds on the way down to the bottom, of somebody hurting me, somebody letting me go, somebody letting me down, somebody abandoning me, somebody violating me, right? And it was just fear. I was letting all of this fear out of my body. I was terrified my entire life. And how that transformed into real life is I was angry all the time. I was bitter all the time. I had walls higher than you could imagine. Trump would love to put me on the panel for his border, let me tell you, because I had strong borders. I wouldn't let anybody in. I couldn't have healthy relationships. I would get fired. I just had the worst time in my life. And it's because I had all of this stored in my body, all of this unprocessed emotion, all of this fear. And it wasn't until I was able to let it out, be outside. And I had 4 facilitators around me, just letting me, holding like love and space for me without judgment. They let me scream my lungs out for 15 to 20 minutes. And I have never felt better in my entire life. I left that retreat healed. I have 0 anxiety, no depression. For the first time in my life, I can take a nice deep breath and then savor the breath. I can sit and meditate for the first time in my life. The voices in my head have significantly subsided. And this is all thanks to the power of healing spaces, plant medicine, non-judgmental therapists, people holding space, community that cares, right? Doing the work, like doing the real work to process my emotions and to truly let out the steam that was under that boiling pot of water.
Oh, that is such a powerful conversation. I feel like for those who are resonating with your story, I feel like the question they would ask is, how can they safely experience something like this? And the key word I use is safely, because I can hear that you were well cared for during this time, and it was a structured, supportive, mediated experience. So could you talk just briefly about that?
Yeah. So what I will tell you is plant medicines are a beautiful gift from Mother Nature. They've been used for hundreds of thousands of years in indigenous communities and tribes around the world. These are medicines that are sacred, and you should always use them and approach them with that reverence that they are sacred. And I would encourage you to only go to these medicines with reputable places and sources, because the source of the medicine is just as essential as the place that you're doing it with, the people that you're around, et cetera. Once you start tapping into frequency, you'll understand that intention of how the medicine is made, how it's consumed, all of that. It's very important. Set and setting is everything for consuming these medicines safely, and to be with licensed or highly trained facilitators that really know what they're doing, because your body can do a number of things. So you want to be in a safe environment, and you should never experiment with these on your own. There are a couple safe entheogenic churches in the United States. There was only a few. The one I went to is in Austin, Texas. So it's a legal retreat for military veterans and first responders. They just opened their doors to also accepting civilians. So if you're not a first responder or military veteran, you can still go to a retreat and sign up for a retreat with them. The one I went to in Austin, Texas, it's called Illuminating Illuminating Collective. You can Google it. And they also have a branch called Illuminating Heroes, which focuses on military veterans and first responders. And then there are some retreats outside of the United States. So a lot of people will go to Costa Rica or Peru as an example. So, but it's highly encouraged that you always go with someone that you know, not just someone, but a place that you know is reputable, because this medicine is big medicine. It's big medicine, and you need to make sure that you're doing it safely. And I will also add too, not everyone is a candidate for it. So you'll want to have a review with a licensed and certified doctor in plant medicines, because some of the medications that you're on might be contradictive to it being safe for you. Also, if you have a history of certain types of mental health disorders, you're not probably going to be a fit. Schizophrenic behaviors are usually a factor of not being a candidate for it. So it's not for everybody, but there's so many different kinds of medicines out there. There's eye drops, there's mouth sprays, there's inhalants, there's mushrooms, there's smoke, right? There's all different kinds of modalities and therapies out there There's combo, which is like another type of like poison that they put, frog poison that they put on your skin. So there's all kinds. And so it's just research online, but also find a good facilitator. And I am my inbox is always open in invitation to anybody that wants to reach out and to chat more. I'm always open to helping them find a little bit more information.
Amazing. So could we ask you around your awareness shift? Because you've painted such a clear picture of before and then during and now, and a little bit about after, because it's been a few months now since this has happened. Could you talk to us about the awareness shift? And because I can really hear a different perspective. I can hear the body of yours, the vessel has had a major discharge, and in doing so, that will, of course, change your mind, because the body signals to the mind whether it's okay, whether there's a threat, how it needs to behave. And then the body reads the emotions and then does the action, and then kind of around we go. But I'd love to know more about your awareness shift that you've had because of the work that you've done up until and including the retreat that you had with the plant medicine in August.
Yeah. One of the things I'll start with is just the key phrases I've used to describe this experience for myself is I lived in fight or flight mode, survival mode my whole life, which is why I was terrified my whole life. So operating from a state of fight or flight mode will have you doing things that aren't you, right? You could probably, this is kind of a silly example, but it's so true. If you watch any end of world or apocalyptic show on Netflix, and a great example would be the Walking Dead show, right? You find humans doing the craziest things to one another out of survival, right? Killing one another to steal food, betraying one another to, find a place to sleep, right? Shove them out to the wolves so I can sleep in here. They just do the craziest things. And when you're in a state of fight or flight mode, you're not operating from your true authentic self, and you're going to be doing things that just they're not you. And so after I did this therapeutic work, and by the way, it's not just taking plant medicine and boom, I'm healed. It's a 360-degree overhaul of your life. You need to change what you're consuming. As an example, I quit drinking caffeine completely cold turkey. I have no caffeine in my system because that was exasperating my anxiety. I stopped drinking alcohol because alcohol is a depressant. That makes you stuck in a depressive loop. So I cut it out of the system. So I'm not drinking alcohol. I'm not drinking coffee anymore, caffeine, right? So I changed some of my friend groups. I stopped going out to parties that weren't serving me here in Los Angeles. I did a lot of things. It wasn't just one thing. So I want everybody to walk away from this not thinking, oh man, I'm just going to go to this retreat and be better. No, you got to do a whole life audit and change the things that aren't serving you in your life if you're truly dedicated. And so once I did that life audit, cut out the things that weren't serving me, and I went through the plant medicine. And by the way, this is an ongoing practice that you integrate the work into your life after you come back from the retreat. I realized that my new perception and the new state of being had me operating more authentically from a place of thriving and surviving, right? So now I'm not in survival mode. I'm now happy and content, and I'm doing great. And so I'm finding the way that I'm interacting with people is so much different. I'm operating from a place of love, right? So even experiences, I'm surprising myself, to be honest with you. I'll give you a simple demonstration of this. I live in Los Angeles and I live in Hollywood. And so I'm in the height of traffic. I live in, high touristy area. There's taxi cabs and all kinds of people on the road. I used to not be able to drive 3 or 4 blocks without honking on my horn. And I'm not kidding, getting out of my car and being ready to throw hands with somebody in a road rage incident. That's how bad my anger had gotten. And that was dangerous. That was not me. It was super reckless. And I was operating from survival, fight or flight mode. And I'm such a fighter that I was like, I'll fight, right? Like I'm ready to fight. And so now, after doing all of this beautiful work that I've been doing, I will drive a mile screw the 2 blocks, 3 blocks. I'm driving a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. And I'm like, I've got classical music on. I'm talking to the birds. Man, what a beautiful sunshine. Look at this bird over here. Is that a rainbow? Like, I'm like so happy in traffic. I'm like, you want to cut me off, friend? You go ahead. Let me make a little room for you. Right. Like, I'm just so much more peaceful and authentic in myself. And that is living from a state of light and love and happiness and joy, and just like, life is pretty cool, man. Life is great. And so I'm just so happy to have that mind shift, that perspective shift, and that state of being shift, where I'm not operating from this like nasty, aggressive, barbarous state of mind. I'm now just in a state of joy. That's great.
It's beautiful. What do you anticipate is going to be coming for you now? Because it's been a couple of months. I'm just doing the math. So it's November now that we're recording this interview. So we've had all of September, all of October, and most of November since. So it's been sort of 3 to 4 months since this last burst of growth has happened. And you've been at a steady kind of peak-ish state since then, and you're really enjoying getting to know your body in a different way, and your life has changed because your body and brain have changed and adjusted and healed. What next? What do you see coming in the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, so the cool thing about the journey that I'm on is it's a journey for life, and I'm operating from a state of awareness, intentionality, and purpose now, whereas before I was so lost. Before I was reactionary, and I was just like, again, in survival mode, just trying to like ping pong my way through life with no direction, no North Star, no compass, right? Like, I was just really lost. So now everything is intentional. It's an intentional practice. So I've completely rearranged my days, where I get up at 5:30, I sit, I meditate, I journal, I'm praying, I'm setting my intention for the day. What do I want, right? I've got my list of affirmations, my list of things that I want to attract into my life. I'm meditating. And when I'm meditating, I'm not just like, oh, I really want this. It's, I am this, and I'm like feeling what it feels like. I'm vibrating it. And so right now, over the next, 12 to 24 months, I'm really working on still learning about the practice and the track that I'm on. So still very invested. I'm so invested in healing myself that I have made it my whole life. So I'm now researching like, what foods should I be eating? And I'm learning how to cook better for myself. I'm learning about new communities that are new to me in Los Angeles that I can be a part of, like women's groups, so I can embrace my femininity and, create a better friend group than I had historically, right? Like, I'm on this healing path still very much. It's a lifelong practice. So I've made it my whole existence. And so now I have many goals. One of them is to help military veterans and first responders. Again, this took me 12 years to get to a state where I'm at today, right? I had the largest traumatic event that happened to me 12 years ago. And I suffered. I've been suffering my whole life, but I really suffered for the last 12 years. I got to the point where I wanted to end my life before I made a change, right? And it shouldn't have to get that bad before people make a change. And so now I'm shouting it from the mountaintops, from the rooftops, that I want people to know, not just military veterans and first responders, but everybody to know that there's resources out there that are different than the mainstream Western medicine ones, where they can get help early and often. So I'm providing free resources. I've got a podcast where I'm helping to champion that message, interviewing subject matter experts, doctors, therapists, facilitators, medicine men and women, you name it, to help people understand what this type of practice is, and to save lives. And so that's where I'm going with it. That's what I've been working on for the last few months aggressively. But over the next 2 years, I'm just continuing to heal, because this is like being in recovery. It's not like you can just go one time to this retreat for a week long period of time and be done with healing. This is forever. You always have to focus on putting yourself first, your mind first, your thoughts first, your body first. It's like, this is so cliche, but it's true. It's cliche for a reason. If you're on a plane and something happens and the mask drops down, you got to put your own mask on first. And so, once you start doing that, you're able to be better in life in general. So right now I'm enjoying just being. I'm enjoying my current state of bliss and my happiness. I'm reevaluating everything around me and like, what do I now want? I'm building intentionality, beautiful mindset around things, purpose around things. And I have this awesome byproduct of the work that I've been doing of helping other people. So I'm really excited about what's to come over the next 12 to 24 months. Things are going great.
Amazing. And are there any particular scars you have that are yet to fully heal? What is there anything that still kind of remains unresolved for you?
Such a beautiful question. Yes. I've done some deep, beautiful work around this topic, but I have some pretty deep wounds with my parents. I have forgiven them. They don't know that yet, but I've forgiven them both in my journeys, and so I've gotten to a place where I can finally sit with it. Because before I was just like, I don't have a family, pushing it off, burying it, stuffing it down. But obviously that still, as we talked about, the body keeps a score, that came up in other ways, and the anger and all of that. And so now, probably in the next journey, I'm going to go explore some other medicines, some other plant medicines to help facilitate some of this work. But I've already started with journaling and with my community group. I meet up once a week with an all women's group, my cohort that I went through my ceremony with in August. And we process, we have a community once a week group where we're just sharing our feelings and talking through things that pop up for us and integration of our lives. Now, I'm ready to deal with my family. I'm ready to deal with the mother wound, the father wound, and to continue processing those things out. And but I'm also in such a great space to finally do that. I think if I had tried to do this 6 months ago, it would have been a very painful process because I hadn't gotten to the point where I had actually forgiven them yet. And I think that's what, for me at least, that's what I had to start with. I had to start with forgiving them first before trying to like justify or get them to say sorry or anything like that. I had to start with forgiveness first. And now I'm actually in the space to deal with the mother and father wounds so I can truly, fully, properly push that out of my body and heal.
So here's my last question, which was interestingly one of my first questions, and you answered it, but I think you're going to be able to answer it more fully after spending this time together. So I asked you right at the beginning about forgiveness. I said you have this, and I'm going to paraphrase myself, but you have this pain that you've had with no justice, and you've still been able to forgive. And now what I'm hearing is you have pain with your family of origin, no justice because they don't yet know about your work and who you are. They still are existing in their own lives, presumably, and your pain is still in existence and you have forgiven them. Could you talk us through, as your last gift of wisdom to us, how you can manage to forgive without justice?
So the most beautiful vision that I had when I was in a mushroom journey at the retreat was I had a woman sitting next to me. This was real life. It was a real woman that went through the retreat with me. She was sitting next to me. But in the vision I was having, I looked at her and her face was my face. And then I had a man next to me that was one of the facilitators. And as I looked at him, I saw him and I knew it was a man, but his face was my face. And then I looked into a mirror and my face was my face, but my face was like a younger version of myself. And what it was telling me is we are all one. We're all one. And through that message, as I looked at the woman, who, by the way, looked crazily like my mom, she reminded me of my mother the whole time we were at the retreat. She actually was braiding my hair while we were there. It was such a beautiful, therapeutic, healing experience to be with this particular woman. Her name's Amanda. She won't mind me saying. It told me that my mother is me. And this guy over here, my father, is me. And they're just like me. They're doing their best, right? And we all make mistakes. And we're all figuring it out through life. We're all ping-ponging our way through this existence, this human experience. And once you realize that everybody is you and you are everybody, that we're all the same, that's when you can realize, oh man, crap. They're making just as many mistakes as I am, And so that's where you can just start to humanize it and to rationalize it and to just let it go, let it be. So even to my there's two service members in particular that had gravely violated me with the photos and, distributing my images. I have the same forgiveness for them without ever getting justice, because we're all just figuring it out. We're all making mistakes. We all fall into temptation. We all fall into traps, to learning traps, to karmic episodes. And when you realize that, everyone is you and you are everyone, you can finally start to let things go.
I loved that where that went and what you figured out. And it wasn't what I thought you were going to say when you painted that picture so eloquently, where you saw yourself on the woman, yourself on the man, yourself in the mirror, but you were younger. I did think where you were going to take this was around not seeing you as other people, but seeing other people as people who were there to help you on your journey, and who actually gave you the context and the pain from which to use in order to alchemize your expansion across your life path in order to do your work. That's what I thought you were going to say. And then when you took it in a different direction, I understood that it is still probably a version of what I thought you were going to do. And it also is a really interesting idea that we are interacting with small people, as in, I don't mean like young, I just mean people who are struggling with the human condition, and we're all bouncing off one another and we all are the same. So I find that pretty interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think you summed it up better, because I couldn't have said it better myself. I think exactly how you said it back to me, the alchemy and all of that. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. I truly believe, and this may be too woohoo for some of the listeners, and fair, fine, I get it. You're not there yet. Maybe one day you will be. But I believe that before we come to this existence, because I believe now in reincarnation, I believe in many lives and all of that. I believe in us being up in the heavens and having a whole conversation about what we want to do when we come to Earth. But I truly believe in relationships that come into your life, all beings, all things, traffic, you name it, everything is designed to teach us a lesson. And I think that the mother wound I have, as I look at my mom now, I just want to hug her, to be honest, and just be like, hey, it is okay. Cause I used to think that she didn't love me, didn't care about me, all these things, but it's like, no, she is me. Like I have a 15-year-old son, and that's been so therapeutic on its own for me, having my mother wound, because I've been able to give to him the things I didn't get myself. And, as I look at him, I'm like, gosh, I hope I'm nothing like my mom. But at the same time, I probably am. I probably screw up all the time, and I probably don't get things right. And my son gets mad at me left and right. And it just gives me more grace for my mom, just realizing that we're really all just the same. We're really just all figuring it out. We're all one.
Oh, and no one gets through childhood unscathed. And you will not get your children through childhood unscathed. It's just not the way of the world, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
it's not at all.
It's not at all. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. You then have the fuel to grow something for the rest of your life. You have questions. You can go on a quest to answer. Why did this happen? Why? And that, of course, is the beginning of the expansion journey. Yeah.
I was just going to say, one of the, my one last little nugget here that I'm still learning this, by the way, I'm very much figuring it out myself, is I was really reactionary, where if something would happen, like the traffic example, if someone cut me off, I was like, oh my gosh, what a jerk, fill in the blank. And I was reacting right away. But I'm realizing now the beauty in just slowing down and being an observer, where I'm just observing what's going on. And the first question I ask, instead of like, oh my gosh, this guy cut me off, what a jerk, if I slow down and I'm observing him, give it a beat, right? And I ask, what is this teaching me? during that moment, this happened for real the other day. During that moment, I realized the guy cut me off to save himself from hitting somebody that stepped into the street to the other side. So I saved myself judging him and being upset with him, and instead was now able to be like, whoosh, I'm so glad that you jumped over, because gosh, nobody wants to hit a pedestrian. That's horrible, right? So I had grace for him and appreciation for him. So, and that was just because I slowed down and observed instead of being so reactionary.
Yeah, we make some space for ourselves. But of course, when our body's full of pain and trauma and questions that haven't been answered, we don't have capacity. There's not enough room to have the space. And what I'm hearing now is you have journeyed so beautifully that you have room in your body to allow the space to ask the question, I wonder why that happened. And then you can have a different experience of life. Really beautiful.
Yeah. Poured out the cup a little bit.
Yes, I can feel that. And so I just really want to say a big thank you for joining us on this episode of Wisdom Stripes. Amy, it has been such a joy to hear your story and to witness your growth and to have learnt from the things that you have spent your life cultivating and questing to answer. That is the purpose of Wisdom Stripes, the podcast, is those who have the wisdom share how they got there. And in doing so, it can short circuit the time that it takes others to heal. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this conversation. I also think you would make a great therapist too. I'm like, I need to have calls with you all the time. Like, you really get me.
I am a therapist. I'm a psychologist. Yeah. So that would be why.
I love it. Yeah. I need you full time. Yeah.
You're a joy. Amy was a US Army veteran who's now all about healing and helping others on their own journeys. Through her podcast and YouTube channel, Qnamy, Qnamy, make sure you check it out. She dives into topics that inspire and empower her audience. If you've enjoyed this chat, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who might love this story. And you can find me on Instagram at @MegTuoheyOfficial for updates between episodes. Until then, this has been Wisdom Stripes. I am Meg Tuohey, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to this episode of Wisdom Stripes. Follow me on @MegTuoheyOfficial and leave a comment and review. I'm looking forward to meeting you here next time on Wisdom Stripes.